Yeah, middle-class families are set to be hit with £8,000 tax bills in 2025.
Yes, it comes as the Chancellor yesterday announced a funding boost of £1.7 billion for state schools, whilst a VAT of 20% will be applied to private school fees from the 1st of January. And here is what the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, had to say.
I recognise that a lot of parents work hard to be able to send their children to private schools, but all parents are aspirational for their children, including the 94% of children who are in our state schools. And so by getting rid of the tax exemptions that exist before for private schools, we're able to invest £1.7 billion of money into our state schools so that they can recruit and retain the very best teachers so that all children can get a great start in life.
Gosh. Right. Elsewhere, new polling by The Telegraph suggests just 1 in 5 believe Labour cares about people who live in and work in the countryside, with reports that Keir Starmer has been warned his ratings have suffered a catastrophic fall amongst countryside voters because of the family farm tax anger.
Who would have seen that one coming? We're joined by former Mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston. Andy, thank you for joining us this morning. Not good news for Labour in any of the papers again, and we're all going to be worse off than we are even now in the new year.
Morning, Dawn. Morning, Cameron. Morning, everyone. Yes, that's right. Lots of bad news for Labour across the papers, isn't it? It's not just the traditional Tory papers. Though I have to say the Telegraph have come out again with this story about the tax raid. To me, the tax raid story is a bringing together of old news. It's an attempt to portray Rachel Reeves as the devil. I'm not here to defend Rachel Reeves, and I am frequently very critical of her. But one thing that the Telegraph have done very, very well is they've articulated that the taxes that are coming in, that we all knew about, these taxes that are coming in, amount to the biggest transfer of money from people's private pockets into the state sector, into quangos, government departments, and pay rises for public sector workers. That's the big story to me, and people should rightly be concerned about this.
Because, I mean, wasn't there a story around during the week that Labour, who wanted to cut through all the red tape and cut down on the civil service, have introduced a quango every week they've been in power so far?
That's exactly right. Labour seem to absolutely love bureaucracy. They seem to love hiring new people and getting things moving that way. They are naturally big believers in the public sector. That's Labour's history, and that's left of centre's ideology. So we shouldn't be too surprised, despite what they say. Right now, in my opinion, what we have to do is absolutely shrink the public sector, not because we don't like it, not because we don't value their work, but we are so stretched for cash, and with zero economic growth on the horizon, things are going to get tighter. And the alternatives are going to be either tax rises or shrink the public sector. Tax rises will, in my opinion, hobble the economy even more. And we're going to have to close the public sector down in some ways and shrink it in the future. Might as well do it now and get it over and done with.
Andy, Labour would argue that investment in the public sector will improve public services and improve people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the idea, isn't it? And do you know what? I personally believe that you can do that, but you can only do that when money is abundant and times are good. And if we think back, those of us who are old enough, to the mid-90s, there was a global economic boom. Labour swept to power under Tony Blair, and there was loads of money coming into the government. They actually put taxes down and got more money, and there was a booming economy. And they used that to fund lots of great stuff. I'm not saying they were totally efficient, but they funded some great stuff. And that's what you can do when your economy is growing. When your economy is shrinking or stagnating, you have to shrink the private sector and keep taxes as low as possible. And we're in a very different environment now. Keir Starmer and Labour seem to want to grow the public sector. That's going to choke the economy and only basically kick the can down the road. And inevitably, there will have to be cuts to public spending.
Andy, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, 20% VAT on private schools comes in on the 1st of January. Now, only 94%, 6% of children go to private school in this country. So surely most ordinary kids are going to benefit from this.
That's the theory, isn't it, Dawn? The theory is that if you tax those in private education who presumably are better off on average, then when you push that money to the state sector, that's good for the majority. In practice, though, what obviously happens is lots of kids leave because there are lots of people who can just about afford those fees. Those kids are pulled out of the private sector into the state sector. The private sector, I'm not saying it's all good, but one of the great things about it is the state isn't paying for those kids to go to school. In theory, we want more kids in the private sector, don't we? Because it frees up more places and more resources for the kids in the state sector. The other thing I'll say about the state sector is there are fantastic schools and awful schools. And I guarantee you that all of the MPs who voted for Rachel Reeves's budget, who wanted to tax the private sector, their kids go to brilliant state schools where it's really hard to get into.
Andy, if you were a fly on the wall in Chancellor Rachel Reeves' office in number 11 Downing Street, what do you think she'll be making of the stagnating growth in this country following her budget? Do you think she would be surprised, or do you think this is her long game and she's secretly thinking it's going to get better?
I think a spy in Rachel Reeves's office would see her. Well, you two were talking earlier about perhaps sneaking a little nip of something strong into your coffee to help you get through tough times. I think Rachel Reeves might be inclined to do that. I think that she is nervous, anxious, and I think Labour hierarchy is terrified. Their whole message was about economic growth, in the same way that Liz Truss's rightly was. Both of them are right. We need economic growth to fund public services. But the growth isn't coming. I will bet £1 with anyone now who wants to gamble that we are heading into a recession if we aren't there already. That will be catastrophic because it means that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have to come back and either put taxes up in the next 18 months or drastically cut public services. One of those two things has to happen. And Rachel Reeves is in a tough place.
Rachel Reeves has promised that she's not coming back for any more taxes from us.
She said that, but that was then and this is now. They assumed that there was going to be growth. Expect them to blame the black hole and other things. Politicians never accept that they got it wrong. It's always someone else's fault. But do expect categorically for Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer to come back and either put taxes up a lot or to cut public services. And of course, being left of centre, they'll be hugely disinclined to cut public services.
Because, Andy, people in this country are so frustrated because they had 14 years of potential distrust in politics under the Conservatives. So now it appears Labour is doing exactly the same thing. It is damaging trust. It's not telling people the truth of what they're going to be doing.
Trust is gone. Trust is gone, isn't it, Cameron? Absolutely. We had political slapstick, didn't we, under the last government? Chaos, people moving around, getting fired, ministers turning over every few months. You know, it was absolutely catastrophic. And like many people, there were times when I publicly said, you know what, we just need a change. We need to change the government. This isn't working. Well, what's happened is it doesn't seem to be any better. In fact, it seems worse. The beneficiaries now, because the Tories not winning that trust back yet, are they? There's no trust in Labour. There's no trust in the Tories yet. The gainers at this point seem to be reform because they're not tarnished with any of the past. And they can criticise everything that's going on without much kickback to them. So the people in a good spot right now are reform. They've got the luxury of not having been in power.
Yeah, no one can point, well, you did this before. Andy, Preston, thank you very much, former Mayor of Middlesbrough, joining us to go through the political stories. Then.
Ideological policies, people like her.
Seamless link to your story in the Telegraph,
Well, exactly. Well, you know me. But no, I mean, Bridget Phillipson, I think she'll go down as the worst education secretary this country will have ever seen.
Gosh, she's only been in the job 6 months.
I know.
I
fundamentally do. She is, you know, these free speech laws that she went in there. Court documents have revealed that she went in there and actually actively went to, get rid of these really vital laws to protect free speech in our universities, in our schools, for our, academics. This is absolutely Orwellian.
Just explain this, Kane. What specifically is she trying to get rid of?
So this was a bill that the Conservatives brought in. It was actually to ensure that people on campuses, university actually had protections of free speech. So, they couldn't be, defunded or got rid of, these sorts of things that actually we were seeing in our universities quite prevalently. And, the Conservatives took action to stop that. Now, Labour have come in and basically on day dot, try to get rid of this. And it is absolutely, like I say, it's Orwellian. But, she's an education secretary who is fundamentally ideological. You know,
well,
she believes...
It's desperately needed as well. I remember just doing my postgraduate at uni and I was speaking about Brexit. Whether it's a success or not, whether people like it or not, it was my view at the time. And the lecturers, the students, you know, I was really battered in terms of the way how I came across for it. And it needs to happen. Yeah. And also, it's like I said earlier, they're not reading the room. Already the polls have suggested that Labour will lose 200 seats. So they're not listening. They're not listening to anyone, the people that have voted them in, even the people on the other side. So, you know, they're careering off a cliff, and I don't mind, to be honest with you, because I didn't want Labour to get it.
We've got 5 years of people careering off cliffs, which is not... I mean, you know, and the Conservatives, you had 14 years to sort everything out. And
no, completely.
You messed up as well, and that's why people voted for the change, and we just don't seem to be...
The problem was, the change that people wanted wasn't what they got, and it wasn't what Labour were offering anyway, but... I think the point was, you know, people just wanted a change.
A change. It was their slogan, wasn't it? It was their slogan.
Exactly, and they said they were going to do that. Whether or not we should have believed them, I never did, and I think a lot of people didn't, you know, viewers at home didn't either. But what I think needs to happen now, and this actually goes to this whole sort of argument that Reform and the Conservatives are having at the moment, you know, unless the right are united, like they have been for decades and decades and decades, Labour will continue to win, and that is not good for our country.
I don't know. I don't think... if they continue the way they're going now, I can't see them winning, can you? I can't. But irrespective... I know it splits the vote and so on and so on, but we shouldn't be pushed into this corner of having to, you know, pander to this two-party system and repeatedly, you know, going for the same parties that have had chance after chance.
The thing is, for better or worse, we're in a first-past-the-post system, which means it isn't quite difficult for other up-and-coming parties to get in.
And we had a referendum on, you know, on changing the electoral system. People didn't want to do it. They weren't interested. You know, we have done that. And to be honest, you know, first-past-the-post does, you know, give us, most of the time, strong governments, you know, throughout history has given us stable, strong governments.
It's not working anymore.
At the moment, you know, we've seen ups and downs, but what I would say is this, you know, this Labour majority is very paper thin. It's not very deep. It's very shallow. It might be wide, but it's shallow. And the reason for that is because of the split on the right was allowed them to get through. And it's the same what happened with
But people are tired, like I said, and, you know, it's a shame because with Reform's ticket going up, even if they surpass Conservatives, they're only going to get, at the moment, 75 seats, which is just not enough, is it?
No, it's not.
What do you do?
And that's the point, though. And I think this is what Conservatives, and I'm talking small c and big C Conservatives, need to actually look at themselves and say, what is the most important thing here? Is it, you know, getting rid of Labour and changing fundamentally this country and making it a Conservative one again, culturally and economically?